Hey, so this is Turniper, and I'm back, and this time instead of Total War, I'm actually going to be streaming some programming. So, I'm still not sure that streaming programming is a good idea in general. I mean, I don't know of anyone large who actually does this successfully and has people watch it. I feel like it could be possible, but it's always going to be inherently difficult because, actual programming tends to be roughly 80% banging your head against the wall until you figure out what you were doing wrong. So really, you kind of have to know what you were doing before you properly film it if you don't want your viewers to be bored. And, well, in that case, you might as well have done a tutorial video. So, I'm doing this anyway because I'm writing this code anyway, and this game is kind of cool, and I'd love to share it. And if you have any just general programming questions, or even questions about the just software engineering industry in general, I am an actual professional software engineer outside of the game development I do for fun, so I can answer those too. I mean, shit, if you're a university student, you got a homework problem, I'm happy to help. That's what happened when I was streaming on Twitch. It's all I ever got, Brazilians who needed homework help. But anyway, today I'm going to be going in, and I've been working on a game in Unity for about 4 years. It's a RPG loosely inspired by Dark Souls, Skyrim, and old school RuneScape, which I know is a very eclectic set of ideas. But I'm going to be going in and actually finally fleshing out my save load functionality, do some really basic persistence, and yeah, probably go from there. I think I'm only going to stream for like an hour or so save load is probably going to take pretty much all that time. Yesterday I finally finished upgrading this to Unity version 2020.2.1, I think. So I'm finally back on the most recent version of Unity. I kind of let that sit for a while. And I also upgraded UMA, which, if anyone's ever actually worked with it, it's immediately obvious from my model. I'm just using the basic UMA models. And this is in the legacy render pipeline. Actually, my graphics got downgraded a little bit because I had Overcloud running recently, but I ultimately decided to remove it because, A, it blocks me from ever upgrading to HDRP. So Overcloud is an asset if you're not familiar with Unity development. So I removed that because it's, A, blocking my upgrade, and B, it was not playing nice with 2020, and I haven't seen the developer update it recently. It's still on the same version and has been for the last few Unity versions. So it just wasn't worth me figuring out what the weird errors it was throwing about XR, and it had some render pass bug that was turning the entire screen gray. So I removed that, and I just threw in a single basic directional light, which is why everything in my scene is so flat. Yeah, upgrading to 2020 also broke all of my icons, so I'll probably look into that at some point in the stream as well. But yeah, for now, though, first I'm going to figure out really basic persistence. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is actually UI design. So you saw that really basic save load screen that I had going back in here. So I also need to get that wired up so that you can access that from the main menu. So I'm going to need some sort of really simple main menu. Right now I've got like a UI component, but I don't actually have the sort of menu you get when you hit escape when you're playing Skyrim, that sort of thing. So A, I'm going to do that. And then add a button there so that you can access this menu, because there's no point in being able to load from the screen if you can't also save. And then I fleshed out a lot of the methods for persistence. So I'm trying to remember where I put this. Save something or other in my code. Need to pull that up. Yeah, so I fleshed out most of the methods, and I'm just going to be doing some really basic persistence today. I thought about trying to actually use an ORM, but for now I'm just going to do all the mapping manually. So I'm just going to write to JSON just on the desktop wherever my application default folder is. I'm just going to use that, and then yeah, once I've written that, I'll just reload it. I'm just going to write the most basic stuff I need: position of the player, and honestly, position of the player is the main thing I need. Oh, and world seed. So I'll need to wire that in too. Yeah, persistence. There it is. Save controller. So I've already kind of given some thought to the way this shit is going to work later on when I actually want to persist a whole lot of stuff. So ideally, I would like to make this an online game eventually. So that means at some point I'm going to have to not just read the entire world state and player state from a single file and load it, but also be able to save player files into a database and then load them from the database while running the world continually. So right now, save file is just going to be my really simple Ah, shit, my mouse has been acting up. Anyway, it's just going to be a really simple object that represents the entire JSON that's going to be stored in a single file. Or, I don't know if I'm going to use JSON or XML, but it'll probably be one of the two. So you got your persistent world and then your persistent player data. And right now everything's just in one file because these classes are tiny. And it's just going to be a vector 3 in the world seed. And this will help a lot for just basic troubleshooting. Because right now a lot of what I do is I load stuff from an individual scene and then just run it from there. But Unity scenes seem to constantly break on me. It's really frustrating. Occasionally it'll just delete all of your objects, and no matter what you do, Unity won't read the file. So I haven't had that bug happen in the most recent version, but I had it a lot in 2020.1 point whatever. So yeah, I'm trying to avoid too many dependencies on scenes where I'm putting in a whole bunch of objects. And then B, I'm doing generic world generation at runtime anyway, so there's no reason not for me to just load up a file whenever I want to do some testing. So yeah, that's kind of the basic goal for this stream, and I've gotten about half of it already written out. So yeah. Like for instance, this my mouse is just not wanting to let me highlight things today. This getAllSaves method is just going to iterate through all of the save files in my application persistent data path, which is just where Unity stores things by default, and then return them as save file view models. And that view model is one you use in the UI, so that's each individual entry in this little list is going to be populated from that. So for starters, I'm going to just do some wiring up with the in-game menu, and then I'll see where to go from there. So since no one's viewing, I'll probably be a little quiet from now on, but if anyone actually does start watching, please feel free to ask questions about the process or just programming in general. So, main menu is the game main menu. Then Game State Manager is the primary UI controller for my in-game section. So, let's see, I'm still getting some errors from when I recently updated UMA. That's just a Visual Studio thing, though. Game's running fine. So I need to implement this method, I think. Yeah. So open in-game menu should... Well, it should have already closed all other windows. So pause the game if we're not in multiplayer. And then I also probably want to do a close in-game menu method, because I will need that at some point. Then activate menu. And this is probably going to be a completely separate game object that will manage all of its state. Deactivate. So I'm just going to go ahead and make that a game object. Oh no, I actually already did. I already have an in-game main menu. And I believe that this... Yeah, so I'm finding it via get component in children. I'm not sure... I guess I do want that to be a child component. So I don't think that exists yet. So first I'm going to write this code, then I'm going to add that object to my UI prefab. Because right now I'm not going to worry about the pause, I'll implement that later. Game object, set active, true. And then I also want to set the main menu screen to the default. Because if you hit escape out of the main menu, it should reload you back in if you were on the save and load screen or something. And I'm not going to do that in the close main menu, because there's just no need. It's easier to do it every time you load a menu. Just verify that your UI is all in the correct state, because otherwise... It's just always going to be more frustrating, especially if your main menu gets closed by another object that's not properly calling close in-game main menu. You don't want to necessarily rely on the logic there. You could do it that way, but I think it's much more readable and understandable code to do it when you open the menu to set the state properly. So it's taking a second. I need to go look in more detail at the options that Unity provides as far as when it compiles, because I really do not need it to be compiling as frequently as it seems to like to. So what I think I want to do is I'm going to have a new variant of this main menu object, which is going to be a child of the UI prefab. Okay, so actually no, I already have the in-game main menu. I forgot I did that. Cool, so that exists. So right now if I run the game, yeah, and it's got the script. So actually this is the child object I mentioned creating, so that exists too. Cool, so I think actually if I run this, I should get this menu appearing and disappearing whenever I press escape if I don't already have a UI window open. So I'm just going to test out all of that first. Huh, is that a seam in my terrain? Put on. Yeah, I have a lot of stuff I need to fix with this character controller. It's kind of janky. Okay, maybe it's not. Anyway, so I've hit escape, I get that. So when I hit escape again, I need to remove that. And I can't click it right now because save and load doesn't do anything. Also, I need to set one of the UI windows to true. Yeah, so a couple of things. I'm going to pull up Notepad. I like using Notepad just for keeping track of to-do items when I work. I use Trello for like actual tickets. I think that was up at the very start. But I like Notepad for just really simple to-dos. So properly close in-game menu. If I hit escape when it's open. So one thing I need to do is I've got this no windows open. I need to have two separate functions. One, no windows open, and no non-main menu windows open. So this one's going to be no non-main menu windows open. Then we will open the in-game menu. If in-game menu game object active. So if it is not active, then we open the menu. Else, actually, yeah, so if it is active, then we're still going to close all UI windows. This is a little bit of duplicate code, but I'm fine with it. And then I need to implement this. So no non-main menus open is actually going to do the same thing as no windows open for now. So I'm actually going to move that method down by the other one. It's just really another checker for what windows are open. And properly indent that. 2, 3. Yeah, so now this guy will return no non-main. Yeah, this. So that needs to be true. And why isn't this? Oh, it needs to be static. Which is fine, because all those things it's referencing are static. And so I need to think about what the hierarchy for the in-game main menu is going to look like. As if I just do active self on the parent object, then I need to not put any of those buttons in the parent object. By which I mean the save and load button. Because otherwise I'm going to want to disable that whenever someone clicks on save load and opens up the in-game version of the menu. But active self will work for now. So in-game main menu dot active game object dot active self. So true. I don't think I need the equals equals, because it's equals equals true by default. So there must be no non-main menus open, and this guy must be inactive for no windows open to be true. I think that's correct. There's probably some obvious bugs once I run this. But the things I'm looking for is the main menu properly closes and can't move character when main menu is open. Might be a little difficult to follow how fast I'm going with this. Yeah, load up a new game. So this whole thing is kind of janky, but the guy who wrote Map Magic, Okay, so yep, I definitely have a bug in that I can't steer right now. And that doesn't work either. Okay, so neither of the things that I was checking for work. So I think the function I just wrote is incorrect. Anyway, he didn't write in a clear hook for when terrain generation is finished. So my current hack is that the character just floats in the air for a few seconds until I'm definitely sure terrain generation is done, and then it places them on the ground. So I will either be covering that up with a loading screen, which would be the hacky solution, or implementing an actual fix later. Okay, so no windows open. Yeah, this should be a not. This is backwards. And that window is also not open. Not that window is open. So let's see how that goes. I don't tend to be a very methodical programmer. I tend to I implement small features until they're done. Okay, so now I can move around again. When I open a window, I still can't. And when I hit this, I can move my mouse, but the player doesn't move. And hitting escape again and closing it does not work. So there's a bug in this update function. So if it's not open, then we active it. Else we close all UI windows. So I just I didn't add that to close all UI windows. Game main menu dot set active, game object set active, false. And there are probably a few cleaner ways to do this, honestly. I could send some sort of message that all of these objects are subscribed to, but for now it works. And particularly for the UI, I'm just kind of keen on keeping it on the simplest of functionalities. Because ultimately, I don't anticipate having too many additional elements. Oops. I accidentally hit the play button twice. Yeah. So escape. Cool. And yeah, that works. So all my other buttons are hotkey based. So when I hit escape, they close. I hit escape again, I get the main menu. So now I need to figure out how to pause the game. That will be the next step. And I have a bad habit of just like starting on items and not actually adding them to my Trello. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I also have a bad habit of creating some of these way too small. The color system is kind of my own version of story points because Trello doesn't support story points. So yellow is kind of a medium, basically the equivalent of a 5 in my mind. There will be a fair amount of work going into this. So both of these work. So now I need to wire up the button to properly show that screen. The same screen that you get from the main menu. And I will probably turn that into a smaller prefab and then just reference that prefab in both of these places. And then its internal logic will do things like disable the save button if you're accessing it from the main menu. Because really, it is the same screen. It's just being used in two different places with two different sorts of functionality. So that's one thing I need to do. And then, of course, I actually have to do the persistence. And I need to wire up the load button as well later on. So this is save/load, and then I'll wire up load later. Okay. So that works. So I'm going to make this an entire child screen, really. So I'm going to create a new UI object, and I'm going to call it... create empty object. Yeah, I'm going to call this in-game main. This is like 2 layers of main menu, but I can't think of a cleaner way to do it. So in-game main menu is this whole main menu section, so it's going to be stuff like save and load and options. So this will... I'm going to go ahead and just create some of these prefabs for someone who need them. And... I'm not sure if I'm allowed to have slashes. I guess I am, apparently. Yeah. So this main menu is actually going to be the selector menu, I guess I can call it. But the first primary screen that you see, so this guy is going to have a I'm going to put an awake method on this. So with an awake, I'm just going to get selector menu, which first I need to add this class. So let me close this. So in-game, and I'm going to call this primary, in-game primary menu, main menu. Yeah, I'm just going to call it in-game main menu. Where did I put the class for this, though? Yeah, so there's in-game main menu. Main menu. And I'm going to move the in-game main menu class I already created into that folder. So ideally, selector menu is going to be the only other unique class that's within the in-game main menu, and everything else is just going to kind of be shared. So from the out-of-game main menu, you could access the save and load, or you can access the options, and they'll functionally be doing the same thing. Yeah, so if it'll just let me move this without constantly opening Visual Studio, what did this do? Why? Huh, I don't know about that addressables editor. Anyway, in-game main menu. So I'm going to create that selector menu class that I was referencing. It's a really bad name. I should rename it at some point. And yeah, and this will be a mono behavior just because I am going to add it. So I don't think this does anything yet. I guess selector menu is actually kind of an apt name for this class, because I'm literally just creating a class I'm going to be using as a selector. So I'm going to find this. Where is... shoot. Just load file screen. I need in-game main menu, which closed because I moved it. Selector menu equals get component. Yeah. So I could also just make this a public object and then assign it within the inspector to its child, which is honestly probably very modestly faster, but I still just don't trust Unity prefabs. So honestly, that is probably better design, at least as long as I don't actually need to add any logic to this later, which I very well might. But I'm going to leave that class for now because I expect fully to need to add object logic. I'm pretty sure it's going to complain about me, about style. Oh, no, it's not, just because I'm never using it. So yeah, on click and load button, selector menu.setActive, gameObject.setActive, false. And then I'm going to want to add a method here for setting this active, because I'm probably going to want to primarily do it from the in-game menu object itself. So public void set activate. And I'm going to change all the references in Game State Manager to use this guy instead. So back to the primary screen. So close all others. And I haven't implemented these yet, but private, or actually no, I think I already have update. Load file screen, save, load screen. And I think I'm missing, yeah, I need to put this all in the UI namespace anyway. Oops, so I think it's Control-K, Control-S. Yeah, so the hotkey for Visual Studio insert a namespace is Control-K, Control-S, in case you ever needed that. Yeah, so that goes all in the exile.ui namespace anyway. So I'm doing a good job of using namespaces with this project, but honestly I probably need more assemblies too, because I have a lot of code at this point. So selector menu, game object, set active, true. So we activate that, and then we will be closing all of the others. And yeah, so now in, oh, I seem to have also closed game state manager, which I need open and pinned, as I'm going to be touching that guy a fair bit. Which, really, that's a bad name, too. It should be more like player state manager. This is written very much from the perspective of controlling the player UI. Yeah, so I'm actually going to just open in-game menu. We'll instead call in-game menu.activate. Oh, so actually, no, I just said the game object, right? Oh, I think I just didn't make activate public. No, I did. Activate. Why can I not reference that? In-game main menu has a method called activate. It's a mono behavior. This guy is of type. Oh, wait, what? So I have two in-game main menu classes. That's confusing. So this is the one in exile.ui. And yeah, I don't know how that happened, but I need to find this guy and delete him. So this one is in spawn window? I don't know how that happened, but I'm just going to delete it and then reload Visual Studio and hope that works. So let's see what Game State Manager does. This actually references exile.ui. I should probably move the whole class in there, but that's going to break a bajillion things. Yeah, so I think now that should give me access to activate. Really? That's weird. So in-game main menu, go to the definition. Yeah, it's got a public void activate. What is going on with that? Can I? Okay. Yeah, so I can generate a method, and that should work. But why can I not just do activate? Is it a reserved keyword or something? Oh, no, it's just working now. That's weird. Normally I'd blame Unity, but in this case I'm going to blame Visual Studio, or possibly my own fault for the namesake snafu, if that was a copy-paste mishap. Anyway, we are going to, we call activate, we're going to set our self active. So this.gameObject.setActive true. And then we're also going to set the selector menu active. And then we're going to close it. And I could add a close method, but for now, just closing it and then hitting activate should properly set things. And then a click load button, that's the, I'm going to call it click save load button, because it's really a screen that does both of those things. So yeah, that'll turn off the selector menu and turn on the save load screen. And I think that's all the code I need for getting that working. I just need to wire it out, and then I need to put the prefab in there. Yeah, so let me go back to the main menu. So I have the load screen, and so it's got a load file screen, which is indeed what I'm using. So yeah, I'm going to make this guy a prefab, and I'm actually going to put him in out-of-game main menu. And I will make this... Oh, so there is a load screen. Yeah, so I'm going to put this guy as a prefab in here. Children of a prefab cannot be reordered. Okay, so this guy is already a prefab, but I can prefab his child, which, hoo-wee, that's going to get confusing. Anyway, so I can go into main menu and get the UI it's generating, and then in the UI, this save load screen, I'm going to... That's weird. Trying to create or replace a prefab that references a missing script. What script is missing? Oh, I moved the, I removed this guy. Or I moved this guy, which removed that guy. So this is, I need to add remove a component in game main menu. And that just happened because I moved the file directly in Unity, which normally doesn't break things. Doing it in Visual Studio definitely does, but sometimes it breaks things in Unity too. That just happens. And then I'm going to want to go into load screen and add this load screen as a child of in-game main menu. And oops. Yeah. So when I activate, I need to disable the save load screen. And then I think the last step here is I need to go in selector menu and I need to wire up that button. And oh, apparently this load screen, this prefab does not look correct. I don't know what's going on with that. I will have to look into that prefab. Yeah, I should save the prefab. So this prefab looks correct in here, and it's stretched across the entire screen. But when I go into the UI, it does not look correct. Yeah, that does not look right. So that's stretched across the entire screen, and so is that guy. But he looks drastically wrong. That's fine, though. As long as the buttons work, I'm happy with it. So in selector menu, I have a save and load button, which I'll just leave that guy disabled for now. And in my save load button, I want to add an on-click event that will hit the in-game main menu, so it's parent object, and call click save load button. All right, so let's see how that goes. Okay, so right now that button is not doing anything because I'm getting an all reference exception. In-game main menu.22, and that's because I'm not getting the save load screen. Load file screen. Yeah, and then I also need to look at this. So in my load file screen, yeah, I need to add some sort of method that's going to hide and disable the save button if I'm not opening this from within a game, because I can't save a game if I'm not currently playing one. Okay, so I'm already getting a null reference exception. So selector menu is being disabled, probably. I'm not sure that I actually set the game object on the selector menu. So I mentioned I was going to use that mono behavior specifically as a selector, and I didn't add it. So that's the problem there. Huh. Yeah, when you think about it, this is a lot like the rubber duck method of coding. I'm just explaining my thoughts as I go. I need to figure out what is up with that flashing, because it might prove to be an issue when further terrain tiles get loaded in later on. Okay, and it's still... Yep, get component children, load file. Oh, so I know what the bug is. It's there's actually 2 overloads of get component and children, and only one of those overloads properly gets actual disabled children. So you have to add that true in there if you want to be properly selecting disabled children. Otherwise, you'll only get active ones. And since I disabled load file screen in my prefab, it's disabled at game start. So it doesn't grab the prefab, so it can't re-enable it. Or it doesn't grab the reference, so it can't re-enable it. Yeah. Okay, and that didn't do anything. It's weird. So what am I missing now? So click Save Load button, disable it, and we set Save Load screen to active, except we're not. And Save Load button appears to be hitting it. So let me see if Unity will cooperate and actually let me set breakpoints. And I don't have to use statements to debug. It's just sometimes, like, Unity version by Unity version, sometimes it just fails to build. And this looks like one of those Unity versions that is not going to be cooperating with me. 18,000 errors. I will have to look into that at a later date. I'm not going to try to troubleshoot that on stream. This looks like a whole bunch of my other assemblies are failing, not any of my code. Which is always nice, but still super frustrating that Unity does not work well with Visual Studio out of the box. So I'm just going to add a console.log. Oh, it's debug.log. I think console.log is JavaScript? I forget. There's too many of these. So that'll tell me if the method's being called. So this time I'm not sure what the issue might be. Okay, so it's not... Yeah, so it's not saying that the function is being called. Let me set the highlight color to something really obvious. So it's not being highlighted either. Oh, wait. I need to go into this, because I was looking at the prefab to see what objects were and were not active. So in-game main menu activates, and selector menu is there. Yeah, and it's just not hitting the load file screen. What happens? Nope. Aha! Okay. So it's something about not having a UI window open is messing with me. Yeah. So when I have another UI window open, it's still not highlighting, but it is working. And yeah, the back button is exploding, obviously. So I need this to handle in-game as well as main menu. Put that as a to-do. I need to find that Visual Studio extension that makes all your to-dos appear in a bright teal text. That looks like it'd be... I've had it for work computers, but I haven't found it for my personal one. I don't really install extensions on my own Visual Studio setup. I just use whatever work has as a default usually. Anyway, so now I have a rough idea of what the problem is. So what is different about that window versus this guy? That is the question. So I think first I'm going to look at where no windows open versus no non-main windows open is being called, just in case that's anywhere relevant. So that's only ever called in 2 places. That's called in several places. So UI active. UI is active if any windows are open, including the main menu. That seems right. So player character input. Is this doing anything with my clicks? It's doing a lot of things, but nothing that I think would block the clicks. So I think something is setting cursor.lockState incorrectly when I click. Yeah, this is my pause button. This is a really easy way to pause if you ever need to. But yeah, I think my cursor lock state is being set wrong, so I need to find all references to this. So I'm not sure where else I'm setting that. So it is mostly in Game State Manager, pretty much, exclusively. And a little bit in UMA. That's weird. I don't know what UMA would need with that. Yeah, also, I need to remove this crypto FX package. I don't think he's... Yeah, I don't think this is being run anywhere, but that package just has too many shader keywords and it's definitely messing things up. So when we toggle windows, we sometimes change it. That would not be it. And cursor lock state seems to be correct. Although, I wonder if I'm not correctly setting it to none and visible true whenever I'm activating that new window. I think that might be it. So that's where my toggles are. So open in-game menu window, we activate it, and then we unlock our cursor. Because the default behavior of the cursor is locked during the game. The double clicking on the play button is the bane of my existence. Okay, that works. Yay! And the back button still doesn't, obviously, because I haven't implemented that. But we do correctly save and load. So wire up the button works. Do the persistence has to wait. So back button works from in-game menu is one of the things we need to do. And then in-game is the correct size/shape, because this does not look anything like the actual menu that we want. So I think I'm going to do a little bit more and then I'm going to stop. Because I know it's a really short stream, and actually it's a long video, very short stream, but I have been programming all day. I am a professional software engineer, and yeah, I'm just not super feeling additional programming. Although that is a really cool view. But I did get a little bit done, so I'm happy with that. And I hope that if you're learning Unity, this has been a little helpful to you, just seeing some patterns that you might use behind the scenes, as well as how some stuff works. Yeah, that's a cool scene view. Definitely my terrain looks a little better from a distance than it does up close right now until I fix the lighting. As Unity's lighting is not great, just to go off on another tangent. So I would love to update to HDRP, but I am basically entirely dependent on either NVIDIA ray tracing getting good enough and the cards getting common enough that I can rely on that for global illumination, or Unity actually releasing a replacement for Enlighten that works in HDRP. Because right now, light probes just do not work when your entire world is procedurally generated. It's simply, you could do a bake, just like generate the light probes dynamically and bake everything, but it would give you like insane scene loading times. They'd be on the order of minutes, and that's just not really acceptable in 2020. I mean, I don't think that ever was acceptable. So, yeah, if I had like if I was able to do the majority of it at world generation, and then had a complex system for setting up jobs way in advance of a player getting to an area, it might theoretically be feasible, but would still involve saving a huge amount of disk space. So, yeah, it just really is not feasible to use light probes if you're doing a procedurally generated world. So I'm kind of stuck on universal render pipeline and therefore all the old lighting tools until such a time as we get some kind of real-time GI solution. But for now, I'm just worried about the UI and the gameplay. And then, who knows? Initially, they said they'd have that by like 2021.1, which is really the first 2022 release. But it looks like that was silently removed from the roadmap. So at this point, my kind of saving grace is I'm just hoping that NVIDIA ray tracing eventually gets performance enough that I can use it, and the cards get popular enough that I can properly rely on it as a default feature. Because doing really good global illumination without it is just not really possible. So till then, my game is probably going to be kind of ugly, because there's only so much I can do with lighting without GI. It's kind of a pretty fundamental technique, and unfortunately not a super easy one to implement in Unity with an entirely proc-gen world. So back button, I think, is the next step. Yeah. So from our save load file screen, so I'm not sure how we'll determine if we're in the main menu or the game. So I think private pool running in-game, or is in-game menu. And I'm going to actually make this a property, which I don't usually use in Unity, but I don't want to view this in the editor. Yeah, so if game object, I can barely remember the syntax from this. Well, actually, no, I don't think I can use getComponent in a property, because I'm not sure if C# can do this performantly. So I need to think about how best to do this. Yeah, I guess I'm just going to leave this to a private method for now. Although actually, no, really what I need to do is I only need to run this once. So I can actually make this a value and then do this in awake. Because I'm going to have two of these objects. Yeah, so I can just make this a private variable. So private pool is in-game menu. And then within awake is in-game menu is going to be true if we have a parent that is a game state manager. So if get component in parent game state manager is not equal to null. So if we get a non-null value from that, that means that we are an in-game menu. And now I can just use that. So if we are not an in-game menu, then we navigate to the main menu screen. Actually, I should probably just store that reference, because there's no way that I don't need it at some point. Although Game State Manager has a lot of static functionality. So I can also just do close all UI windows, because that's a static function. That's one of the big advantages of doing what I was doing and having all of those references be private static. It means that I can actually use static functionality on my Game State Manager. So that probably requires a little explanation, what I just said. So in Game State Manager, I have a lot of static references. So if you're not super familiar with those, static basically means that the functionality that's declared static in this class can be called on any instance of this class and will have the same behavior. So it's not in any way dependent on the class itself. But really none of this is actually static. It's just I'm declaring it static, and because of the way Unity works, I can put some not technically static references in there, and then I can call static functions and they work. It's a really hacky way of doing things, but it's super convenient for what I'm actually trying to do. And, well, it's only hacky if it doesn't work reliably. So it's actually a really interesting workaround. Anyway, what's this error? Yeah. Oh, and need an else. So now the back button should work from in-game as well as out of game. So generally, static functionality in like any other domain of programming does not rely on like having references to outside objects. But in Unity, in this case, and I'm just going to check this in the main menu too, so the back still works there. In Unity, like a lot of your static functionality for the UI needs references to other UI objects. And in this case, as long as I just have one of each of these objects in the scene, that static hack works really well. So there's save and load, and I hit back, and it works. So yeah, that's really satisfying that the menu just works in both places. And now I can write any additional functionality, and it should simply work in both menus. So I think I'm actually going to cut off the stream here tonight. My voice is starting to get a little bit tired, and I don't want to completely lose it because I have several meetings tomorrow. So yeah, I didn't actually get around to doing any actual saving and loading, so I may rename this video afterwards because it's currently called Saving and Loading in Unity. But it's really more wiring a menu in Unity. So I hope that was helpful to someone out there, and I'm glad I got it done, because I'm going to use this pattern in several places for a lot of my menus, like saving